Yo, 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 ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Think Big podcast. Happy Tuesday, everyone. If you're here to think big, you're definitely in the right podcast. If you're having trouble thinking too small, can't grow your business, can't grow your mindset, can't be disciplined, can't be consistent, then you are in the right podcast, my friend. My name is Alejandro Alvarez, and then to the right of me, you have the most handsome man here, Mr. Marlon Johnson. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing pretty good, man. We just wrapped up another day. We got 18 days left in this run across America, and I'm excited to almost be done with this journey, with this leg of the journey.
Wow, man. How many miles have you done so far, brother?
So overall, the trip is we're coming up on. We'll get past the 2,500 mile mark tomorrow. So 2,500 of 3,100. So there'll be about 600 miles left between where we're at and getting to Central Park. And personally, I've run about 1,000, a little over 1,000 of those miles.
A little over 1,000.
Yep.
Wow. You know what I'm gonna do, bro? Because you inspire me in so many ways. I haven't taken action on it, but I'm gonna run and I'm gonna put this on Instagram. I'm gonna put myself out there every single day. I'm gonna make a post until I run 100 miles. It's nothing compared to you, but I've never ran 100 miles um, ever really. So it's gonna be like a more consistent. It's gonna be throughout a week. How many miles is that per day?
Dude, 100 miles in a week. That's
That's a lot.
pretty. That's a lot. That's a lot. You're looking at. I mean, let's say you only ran 5 days a week. You're looking at running 20 miles per day.
Okay, let's make it 2 weeks.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Let's make it 2 weeks. What do you recommend, bro, for someone that's just starting out?
yeah, doing a 100 mile week that's a pretty heavy week. I would say if you haven't run in a long time,
Yeah.
aiming at 100 mile month to ease back into it would be. Andrew's looking at me like laughing. He's like, "Yeah, 100 miles in a single week. That's a lot." 100 miles in a month would be pretty solid. If you want to push yourself, 100 miles in 2 weeks is definitely more doable. You're looking at 10-mile runs over the course of having 10 running days and 2 rest days each week.
Now, define like the 10. Let's say I want to run 10 miles in a day. Define what does that look like? Like, what are the rules for it to like, this guy's not really doing 10 miles? Like, do I have to run consistently straight for 10 miles, or can I run, jog, speed walk? What does that look like? Can I speed walk while I do that, or what?
I missed a little bit of it. My internet connection cut. But essentially, if you were to break it up and do like a run, walk, or like a sprint, jog, and you control,
Really? Okay.
that's actually big in the ultra running community. So when you see people running 50-mile races, 100-mile races, 200-mile races, it's never that those people are.
Oh, I think we lost it for a little bit, but as you can see, my man Marlon, he's just working with what he got. He's in the RV, running across the country, having Wi-Fi. What's up, Jade? What's up, Brandy? Nice to see you here, Victor Churkin. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your last name. Nice to see you here, Brandy. I haven't seen you in a while, Jade. How's real estate going for you? Been closing some deals, locking up some deals. I think you were doing TC stuff last time I checked. But yeah, that's as you can see, I'm trying to get into running. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm actually just gonna post this right now. What's up, Marlon? You back?
What's going on, dude? Yeah, I just I'm using my cell phone as a hotspot.
Okay. So before I do this publicly, so I can speed walk, I can jog, I can run, and that's still considered. But can I walk? As soon as I start walking, is that okay? You're not you broke the rules.
No, you can incorporate walking into it. Like I was mentioning before, so in the ultra running community, an ultra marathon is essentially anything that's longer than the distance of 26.2 miles. So 26.2 miles is considered a full marathon. If you run like a 27 mile or a 28 mile, typically we see the most common ultra miler is 50K. So you're looking at 31 miles. From that point on, what you typically see the athletes do is a mixture of a walk run. So it would look something like every mile would be split up with maybe running 0.75 of the mile and then walking 0.25 because it uses different muscles. And you'll hear this phrase in the ultra running community, which is forward is a pace, right? Like people always talk about like, hey, I ran a 6 minute pace or a 7 minute pace. In the ultra running community, forward is a pace. As long as you continuously keep moving forward
Oh
and you
shit.
finish
Okay.
the race, that's the most important thing. So this is what I like so much about running. It really isn't about trying to beat anybody else except yourself, right? And
Right.
when we talk about growth mindset, this is why running is so much a part of my daily activities and my daily rituals. In fact, the people that when I coach and work with other individuals who are working on their mindset, I
Yeah.
do actually have them all incorporate running into their routines and into their habits as a result of them getting used to running their own race. It's not about, hey, being faster than the next guy. It's not, you got out there and Sam ran a 10-minute pace and you ran an 11-minute pace. Well, who the hell cares? It's more about if Alejandro was able
Mhm.
to run today for a half mile before he got winded and he had to slow it down and
Yeah.
start to walk a little. But tomorrow you go out and you run point 0.6 before you get winded. And there's these incremental 1% increases in performance, 1% increases in endurance. That's more important towards developing your character, towards developing your body. It's consistently staying in the game. So for you, if you're looking at doing that 100 miles, like, hey, I want to lock in and run 100 miles over the course of, let's call it 2 weeks, right? Like that would be um, aggressive but doable, right? And I say aggressive if running is relatively new.
Yeah, you know me, bro. I like challenges, and I would consider myself pretty athletic. So I wouldn't, but 100 miles in 2 weeks. You said that's pretty aggressive. 100 miles per in a month. It's more ideal if you want to start to get back in it. But a
Yeah,
hundred 2 weeks. That's about 7 miles per day, right?
if you're running every single day,
Maybe you're running. Okay, cool. So 7 miles per day. I can do that for two
right?
weeks, and
And
I'll
so if you're
probably
looking,
challenge myself to maybe a week and a half, or shit. I don't know. Maybe in a week.
I would just say if running's new to you, be prepared to having some body soreness and body aches. If you're not
Okay.
used to running 7 miles a day every day, and recognize that probably by like day 2 or day 3, you're not going to want to run again, but it will be doable.
All right, dude. I'm going to publicly put it out there.
Dude, I freaking love it, man. Yo, that's cool to me.
Okay.
Like,
So
and
I'm
shout out, I
gonna,
see
I'm gonna
Amber in
say
the
two
chat.
weeks. I'm gonna say 3 weeks. Or should I just say go ahead, just say 2 weeks? What do you think, bro?
Dude, I would say give yourself, if running, do you plan on making running like a regular part of what you're doing and something that you want to build up over time as
Yes,
well?
I really do. I really
So
do.
then I would say spread it over the course of 3 weeks,
Okay.
and that for the sake of building it as a more of a habit versus this one-off challenge. And then this way you could also have rest days in where it's going to be going out and maybe you're running Monday, Tuesday, you're resting on Wednesday, then you're running Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Um, you could even then take Sunday off again.
Yeah. Let's see here. I don't know how to pronounce that name, but he said make sure you got everyday everyday running shoes for that, and not a pair of dedicated to racing. Just lesson learned. Yeah, I'm 30 years old now, so I'm starting to feel my knees do little weird noises here and there, depending on what I'm doing. So, Marlon, is there any particular sneaker? Does it have to be like low profile?
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of ultras. Shout out to Andrew Linder for introducing me to ultras. If anyone orders some ultras, use code Linder for 15% off. Um, but I like that show. I like the shoes because they have a wide toe box, and then also the reason is
Bucks.
what I learned when I ran my first marathon. I was wearing. I'm looking at my feet right now. I was wearing a pair of Nike running shoes, and Nike's cool. But what happened was I was so used to wearing the exact size that my foot was that I got a perfectly fitted shoe.
Okay.
When it comes to running, you want to size up, right?
Okay.
You experiment, like try a half size up to a full size up. I wear full size up, but go from like a half size to a full size. And if you go to a running store, they will measure your feet and make good suggestions to you based on your foot shape and size. The reason being is your feet will start to naturally want to expand with every step. And over long distances, your feet will actually start to swell a little bit because of all the blood flow. So you want to give space in your room for your shoes to expand, and you never want to make your shoes so tight that they start to cut off circulation. So sometimes people tie their shoelaces super tight. I keep my shoelaces very loose for that. So Ultra ALTRA is the running shoes that I've been wearing now for the last year and a half, and that's the shoes that have been taking us across America.
There's a
So
lot of
I'm a
options. I'm gonna send you a screenshot so you can help me
yeah
pick one.
yeah. If you send me like a text of the ones you're looking at, um, we're running right now in the Ultra um, the Olympus twos have been the ones that we've been running in. They have a
Olympics.
lot of the Olympus twos. The reason we're wearing those right now is because they have a lot of cushion and we're doing a lot of distance. But you probably, like if Andrew were here, Andrew would be saying you're going to want to go with shoes with a little less cushion if you're not doing such long distances. Things that allow your feet to grow stronger. So things that aren't putting as much padding in between you and the pavement.
Damn, those Olympics too looks pretty advanced, sir.
Yeah, no, the Olympus twos are fire.
I think I saw you wearing those in the picture. You and your friend.
Yeah, man.
Okay.
No, we've got a ton of those right now.
All right, cool. So I'm gonna publicly make this. Is that okay with you while we on live?
Dude, that's perfectly fine with me.
All right, cool. Should I make it a story or should I make it a post?
I would make it either one. If you're locking into it, you could make it. I feel like you'd make it a post, and then you could share it as a story.
Okay, I'll make it a reel and then share it as a story. All right, ladies
Yeah,
and gentlemen, we are live in the Think Big podcast with my man Marlon Johnson right here. I am publicly stating, I'm making a statement here that I will run 100 miles in less than 3 weeks, within 3 weeks. I've never done this before. I'm just pushing myself. Actually, the topic for today is cultivating a growth mindset in daily life. So, Live Hard program for about 3-4 years now, and Marlon has inspired me to run. So here I am. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live in the thing. Cool.
dude, freaking love that, man. Yeah, so and with this being the topic of cultivating a growth mindset, quite frankly, this is how it's done. A lot of times, in fact, we were running with two guys last week, Mike and Mike and Damon came out and ran with us last Sunday. I remembered his name, Andrew. It was Damon. So Mike and Damon came out and ran with us last week, and awesome dudes. Mike put in 42 miles with us that day, and Damon put in 34 or 35 miles. And the crazy thing about that is before that day, the furthest Damon had ever run, I believe, was about 20 miles or so. It may have been 26, but he definitely had never run more than 30 miles. It was 13 miles. Andrew just told me it was 13 miles. And so when Damon came out and Mike came out, Damon and I got to talking right away in the morning, and he started asking, basically, how do you start to do these amazing things, and how do you start to push yourself? And I told him it's proximity. It's the people I choose to spend time with. In fact, I've been meeting a lot of people. Right now, I looked at Strava earlier today, and
Mm-hmm.
between today and yesterday, in the world, I'm top 100 officially on Strava of runners in the world. And when I looked at my actual stats, I'm probably somewhere in like the top 20. I just can't see because it only shows the top 10. And I started my tracking a little bit later in the month, but when it shows me the amount of miles I ran for the month of April, somewhere in that top 50, top 20 of runners in the world. And so yesterday we were hanging with this girl, Jessie, who's this amazing ultra marathon runner. She does
Yeah.
100-mile or 200-mile races and all that kind of stuff. And she goes, "Oh, so you're a runner?" And I said, "No." She's like, "What do you mean no?" I'm like, "No, I'm not a runner. I'm just friends with Andrew." right? Like, I'm not a runner. I'm friends with Andrew. And the reason I say that is because my association with Andrew has caused me to do bigger things. Since becoming friends with him, I ran my first marathon. I ran my first ultra marathon. I ran my first 100 miler. I ran my first 40 miler. I've run now 626 miles for the month of April. Right? Like, your associations ultimately start to cultivate and shape the way you think, what you believe is possible, what you're aware of as opportunities, the things that you begin to pursue.
Yep.
I personally think it's the most important part of your life that you have control of is who you're spending your time with. And if you're not actively filtering the people in your world, in your life, who you're texting, who you're talking to, who you're calling, who you're going and hanging out with on the weekends, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Hmm. That's crazy, brother. And you know what's crazy too, Marlon? I'm gonna start today, right after the podcast.
Get out of here.
I'm dead serious. You know, bro, come on, man. That whole I'll start tomorrow and the day's new. Nah, you just do it. Just start.
Dude,
I'm gonna
I
start
agree
today.
with you.
Right after the podcast, I'm gonna record my first clip of me running. I'm gonna use Strava, which we used to text each other's Strava
Hmm.
before. Yeah, so I'm gonna start. I know I have Strava. And what's crazy, I just turned my Apple Watch back on after like 8 months. So I got tired of getting notifications. So I'm gonna use Strava. I'm gonna start today right after the podcast.
Bro, I love that. You know what's interesting? I am revisiting a book. Shout out to Amber. She came out. Amber's Andrew's sister. She came out and ran with us. Shout out to both his sisters, actually, Amber and Amanda, who came out and between the two of them ran 42 miles and 39 miles each on Saturday and Sunday. And that's the most either of them have ever run ever, which was just bonkers. And while I was talking to Amber, I asked her about what books she's reading, and she mentioned Atomic Habits. And it was perfect because it actually, I was looking for my next book that I was going to pick back up. And I've read that book in the past. So I'm revisiting Atomic Habits right now. And
Tom, what's it
Atomic,
called, brother?
Atomic Habits.
Comet. Oh,
No.
Atomic Habit. Okay. I think I read that one already. Yeah.
So it's a book I was revisiting, Atomic Habits. And are you familiar with the idea of getting 1% better every single day, Alejandro?
I am not. Here's Atomic Habit right here.
Yep.
Yep.
So
What's it? 1%
when
better? What it's called?
getting 1% better every single day.
Is that a book? Or you ask? Or you
No,
ask?
I'm just asking you the idea of getting 1% better every single
Oh,
day.
yeah, absolutely.
Mhm. So when you look at the idea of getting 1% better every day, for the people who have never done the math on this, right? What's up, Victor? For the people who have never done the math on this, check this out. When you start at a base of one, in other words, let's say we all things equal, we start at one, and you add a 1% increase every single day for 365 days. That compounded increase of 1% over the course of 365 days turns into a 37x multiple. So one turns into 37 by simply increasing 1% per day compounded, right? So it's a little bit, imagine you're talking about lifting weights and you're talking about increasing the amount of weight you lift by 1%. You're talking at the end of the year, if you did that every single day, you're lifting 37 times the weight you started. If you're
Yep.
talking about earning money and you increase the amount of money you earn by 1% every single day, you're looking at 37 times earning on the back end of the year. And a 1% increase is something that's seemingly negligible. It's almost insignificant and unnoticeable in a day to day manner. But compounded over time, it makes massive change. It works in the opposite direction as well. A 1% increase is a 37x multiple, but a 1% decrease with a base of one, starting at one as your base. If you have a 1% negative behavior, 1% negative habits, and you begin moving in the opposite direction over the course of a year, 365 days, essentially one turns into 0.03, nearly zero. So negative habits have a way of whittling away at us. positive habits have a way of building up for us, but it needs time to be compounded. And I think we forget about that because we have a instant gratification mindset. And it's important, again, when we talk about the people you spend time with, put yourself around players who are interested in the process and playing for the long term,
Yeah.
because these are the people that would allow you to continuously show up, continuously improve, and get incrementally better every single day. One of the biggest, let's call it fallacies, is believing that the life changing moment is the one grand moment that like you need to have happen in order to get where you want to be. Everyone's expecting the big crazy moment. In fact, I made an Instagram video today talking about this. That imagine this for a moment, Alejandro. You're sitting in a room and the room is cold. There's an ice cube on the table in front of you, right? It's 25 degrees in the room, so you can actually visibly see your breath. And you're looking at this ice cube at 25 degrees, and you decide to change the temperature in the room by 1 degree, increasing the temperature to 26. Nothing happens to the ice cube. 27, nothing happens to the ice cube. 28, 29, the ice cube is still sitting in front of you. Nothing has changed. 30, 31, still nothing. 32 degrees, you suddenly begin to see the ice cube, it starts to melt. Now, did that 1 degree do all the work? Or was it the aggregate of all the degree changes from 25 to 26 to 27 to 28 to 29 to 30 to 31 to 32, where it suddenly got to 32 that now the change begins to happen? That's the power of incremental progress. That's the power of building the right habits and doing the work over time. All that time while the temperature was changing, it seemed like nothing was happening, right? This is us starting to work out. This is starting to read books. This is starting to hang out with the right people. This is starting to work on meditation and working on prayer and working on waking up at the right time. We're doing all this work in the early phases, and it feels like nothing's actually happening yet. And this is where most people stop, right? Because they're starting to get to that place of latent potential. It hasn't happened yet, so they feel like it's never going to happen, and so they give up on doing the work. They give up on doing the things that will ultimately get them to the temperature of 32 degrees, where suddenly the change seems to happen almost overnight. It's about continuously falling in love with the process and doing the work up until the point where you hit that line of potential where the change occurs. Does that make sense?
Yep. 1000%.
So when we talk about cultivating this growth mindset, it's keeping that in mind, that ultimately we want to build in our lives, in our routines, the sort of daily rituals and behaviors that ultimately get us to where we want to be. But recognize it's going to be a process. I don't care who you are, it's going to take time. It's going to be a process.
You know what would be really dope, Marlon?
What's that?
Or maybe it wouldn't, but just the idea or the possibility that you know how everything you do in life, especially when it's new, it's going to take time for you to get decent at it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be like instantly you're really good at it. You know, sometimes sure, it's something very, very, I don't know, small. But if you, for example, if like, okay, great, I want to become a consistent runner like my friend Marlon. If I set the wrong expectations right in my mind, like, okay, I'm going to give myself 30 days. What if it's 30 days not enough? And plus everyone has a different time frame. Some people it may take 2 years for them to start being consistent at running. Some people it may take 6 months. I don't know. But imagine if you can physically put yourself in a position where, hey, I'm going to do this, and something reads at you, okay, great, if you're going to do this, this is how long it's going to take you to become good at it. Wouldn't that be cool to have that? But then again, I'm thinking back at it like, well, that would remove the fun of the journey to get to being better. So it's a pros and cons to both sides, but that would be really cool because I think if you knew, a lot more people will be successful, especially in our industry, in the real estate industry, where we see people come in for 90 days and they freaking quit knowing that this shit's still taking 2 to 3 years to get better. Till this day, I'm still getting better in my business, and I've been doing it for 4 years consistently.
Yeah.
But
Well,
that would be really cool.
yeah. Well, you know what's funny? Andrew and I talked about this today actually while we were out on the trail running. That there's two seasons. You have one season where you force these timelines. Like for example, while we're doing this run across America, we're Pier to Park right now, running from Santa Monica Pier to Central Park, New York. We put a timeline on this: 78 days, March 1st to start, May 18th to end. We're standing in Central Park, completed this journey. So we're forcing the growth to occur within a contained timeline, within a contained environment. And because of that pressure, it's forcing us to adapt, grow, and evolve. At the same time, there are different areas of in our lives where we set a target of what we want to accomplish, but we don't set a deadline on it because we can't control every external factor. And so it's more now at that point about falling in love with the process and showing up and choosing something that you don't mind crafting and grafting away at every single day until you get there. For example, as like a parkour athlete, when I was doing parkour, I didn't sit there and count the days until I went pro. I was just so in love with learning how to be a parkour athlete that naturally I ended up going pro just happenstance. Right? Like it just happened because the inputs I fell in love with making the inputs. I fell in love with doing the thing every single day. And so I like the idea that when people are looking to cultivate a new habit or ritual or routine in their lives, that they don't look at it as like, hey, I'm going to go do a diet for a little bit. Instead, I'm going to create a new lifestyle. I'm creating an identity shift. I'm not a guy that's, trying the carnivore diet. I'm a guy who eats healthy meats. I'm not a guy who's trying a new workout. I'm a guy who exercises regularly. And I start to create a plan. And I think everyone should look at this and entertain this idea of creating the plan that you could follow, not for 30 days, not for 90 days, but that you could follow for 50 years.
Yeah.
If you could follow the plan for 50 years, you're now thinking like a long-term player.
Yep. So I'm gonna set myself. I'm gonna give myself 5 years to become somewhat at least 30% of what Marlins is doing right now in the running industry right now. That's what I'm gonna give myself. 5 years, bro.
That's funny, man. I love that. Well, let me ask you this. Inside of your world, what are some things that you've done? Like, take me back to basically earlier Alejandro when you're getting into, you're shifting away from the previous life that you were a part of, right? Like, you were in a completely different scene. You were a totally different guy. And as you started to move into this space, what were some of those early things that you look back now on that you were doing regularly that helped cultivate the sort of character that you have as of today, right? Because I know I look back and I reflect and I can think about, wow, like I don't do this as much anymore, but there was a season of like straight up consumption where I was full immersion on every Tony Robbins video I could find on the internet. Like I think I have single-handedly given like every Tony Robbins video on YouTube at least 1,000 views, and I contributed to like the monetization of that YouTube channel, of those YouTube channels that host Tony Robbins videos.
Mm-hmm.
I had to rewire the way I was thinking. And so I was consuming different things. What were you doing to rewire your mind in the early days? And did any of those habits continue with you today?
I'm going to say I just got sick and tired of being sick and tired. And honestly, the transition, I did it by myself, and I can happily say that because there was nobody in my corner to tell me, yes, man, it's time for you to change. I just got tired of it, bro. I was drinking all the time. I was around the wrong crowd that wasn't really wanting to grow. It was just the same stuff over and over, going to clubs, going to bars, meeting new people that really wants to only drink and talk, small talks. And at some point, I told you the story, what happened with my father when he got really sick and passed away, and that was just that was number one. That was the first strike for me. Like, what the f am I doing with my life? Why couldn't I financially provide in a situation where I can help, not stop a death? Of course, that's inevitable, but at least to help someone to stay alive for a little bit longer if you had the financials together. And that was the first strike for me, man. And that's when okay, you know what? I'm gonna stop drinking alcohol because I spent a lot of money on alcohol. And what's that was really difficult because you're already in the circle where everyone is drinking alcohol. That's why you drink it every day. It's not like I was drinking alcohol by myself. It was social. Everyone around my circle, so it was really tough. In fact, when I stopped drinking, there's a lot of people that was against it. Like, oh man, you're being a B word. Why are you doing that? Like, come on, man. Or when are you gonna start drinking again? It was all of that stuff in my head. And the only person that kept on moving me forward was myself and Andy Frisella. I'd never met the guy in person, but listening to his podcast, it made me realize that these new thoughts that I'm having and these new habits that I want to create, it's actually freaking normal for someone to be healthy, be successful, and have the right mindset, have a healthy mindset. Like how in the world I'm going to have a healthy mindset, freaking getting drunk almost every night? How? Being obese, gaining weight. I don't know, the highest I've been was like 220 or something. It's crazy for me at that time.
Let me ask, right? Like, even like right now, these days, do you ever drink at all? Do you drink much?
Nah, I stopped. I
Yep.
stopped completely. The last time I had a sip of alcohol was 2 years ago for New Year's. And that was it. And I took a sip and almost threw up. I'm like, nope. And before that was probably a year and a half.
Yeah,
So
it's what's interesting is something I have started to notice because when I started on this journey, I did find my alcohol consumption drop down to almost zero. I'm not like completely non-alcoholic. I'll have a drink every now and then
yeah,
if the occasion warrants it, but like really, just I could count on my one hand how many times I've drank in the last year.
yeah,
And something I started to notice when I started going to masterminds, networking with other individuals, that the people in the rooms who were performing at the highest level, they
yeah,
tended to be these sober, clear-headed guys, guys and
yeah,
girls, right? Like they seem to always be in control of themselves. They had this aura about themselves that they were always alert and they were always intentional. And they knew why they were there. They knew what they wanted. They weren't afraid to ask for it. And also, they weren't afraid of rejection. And that was something that I remembered very early on when I stopped drinking. I used to drink Alejandro because it gave me confidence. Quite frankly, like that's what it did for me. It gave me a lot of confidence to go and
mhm,
approach strangers, to have a good time, to let loose and be myself. And I didn't want to rely on that as a crutch.
mhm,
I didn't want to need that to be able to go and do the things. And then I started seeing these people who were able to have that confidence soberly. And so now I became aware that, okay, it's possible. You can still have a good time sober. You can still have a fun time sober. And it doesn't negate the progress that I was making regularly. Like I wasn't working my ass off Monday through Friday to go and deconstruct all the progress Friday night and Saturday night,
yeah,
which is what I see a lot of people do. I see a lot of people go and deconstruct their progress on the weekends, and it doesn't make sense. So, just because we're this topic today here is about cultivating a growth mindset, I want to put that out there and remind people to not undo the hard work you're doing. This is the equivalent of working your guts out in the gym, but then coming home at the end of the night and having your cheat meal. Why not compound the progress with better behavior?
mhm.
And when you start to drop the bad habits, do you really miss alcohol much at all?
No, none at all, bro. In fact,
Right.
I had alcohol around me just to make sure that I don't miss alcohol. I don't know if that make any sense, but I had it around me, which is kind of the opposite what someone would recommend. Like, hey, if you want to quit something, remove it from your surrounded. which at some point it was still around me, and I just looked at it and walked by it. There was no like hesitation, like, oh, what if I could have a no, I just walked by it.
Yep. No, and that makes perfect sense. And I'm in the same boat. And I saw Jade dropped in the chat. She said I stopped drinking several months ago. And it's definitely one of the best decisions. And it is to have that sober mind, to be able to show up clearly, to be in charge and in control of yourself
Yeah.
is a part of the process. Now, what's interesting as well is when we're looking at cultivating a growth mindset, a common misconception is people hear us talk about positive thinking, having good vibrations, and there's this fallacy that life is this cherry rainbow field of joy every moment of every day. And I would actually say that most commonly we're actively putting ourselves into tough situations on purpose
Yeah.
for the sake of growth. And it's almost paradoxical that for the sake of growth, for the sake of having an easier life, we subject ourselves to what we consider to be difficulties. And difficulties are subjective to everybody. It's different to you as it is to me, and different to me as it is to Jade. Right now, I'm in a season where difficulty is waking up and running 30, 40 miles a day with Andrew. That's difficult. That's a weird thing that doesn't need to be had. Other people, their difficulties might be just having a very tough conversation with their loved ones. Other people, their difficulties might be waking up and going to the gym before going to work, reading a book for 20 minutes a day, following through on their New Year's resolutions, even though now we're in April and they dropped the ball for the last month, and acknowledging that they dropped the ball and came back. Going through the difficulties and going through the hard times ultimately are the things that make us stronger. Jim Rohn used to say, and this stuck with me, like when I look back on what were some of those things I was putting into my head back in 2018, 2019, and even earlier than that, quite frankly, was Jim Rohn. And he would say, don't wish life were easier, don't wish things were easier, wish you were better. Right? Don't wish for an easier life, wish that you were better so that you'd be more capable. And I want to remind people of this in here tonight. Again, if you're listening to us, there's a reason you tuned in tonight. I don't believe in coincidences. If you're on here and you're listening live, and maybe you're in the middle of cooking dinner in the kitchen, or you got us in the background, but you're tuned in right now, this is a sign that you're supposed to accept and embrace the obstacles. In fact, is it cool if I just talk about last week? I forget what day it was. It may have been Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday. We were on the side of the road, and everything that could have gone wrong, Alejandro, did. I'm talking no energy in the morning waking up. It was chilly in the morning. Winds were blowing in our face. We had no shoulder on the side of the highway, semi trucks coming down the road. Then the Land Rover shut off on us. It wouldn't turn back on, so our support vehicle breaks down on us. The RV is an hour away with the other two guys and the supplies and the food. And my body and Andrew's body are just like in shambles. Like everything hurts. My shin's on fire, like shin splints. My right foot, I'm sitting there thinking I got a broken bone in my foot. Like the body is just aching. His body's aching. And my mind starts telling me all the things of, listen, you can just stop, you can call it quits today, you already walked, like you already went 20 miles, like just pack it up, come back tomorrow, you don't need to keep pushing, you don't need to keep doing this. Who are you anyway? You're going to hurt your body. Like just all the negative talk that could possibly come in starts coming in. And in that moment, I had to remind myself that these are the times to develop strength. These are the times to develop mental fortitude. It's not when the grass is green and the sun is shining and everything is working out perfectly and your boss calls you up and gives you a raise and your girlfriend calls you and says, hey, I made dinner for us. And like it's easy to think positive during those times. What about the times when everything sucks, you're miserable, you're pissed off, you're cold, you're uncomfortable? Can you take control of your mind then? And so I want people to look at your situation right now, like the listeners right now, look at the things in your life that have been bothering you, the things that have been stressing you out, the things that you've been complaining about and pissed off about, and ask yourself, what's the opportunity here? What is this obstacle presenting in my life as an opportunity for growth? How can I grow in this moment? Not next week, not next year, in this moment, what can I pull from this? Can I be a little bit more patient? Maybe the lesson here is, hey, I've been too damn patient. Can I be more aggressive? I've been letting this person in my life step over me. Now I need to say something. I need to make a change. This is when we start talking about like cultivating a growth mindset. What's interesting, Alejandro, is people don't even recognize that the opportunity to grow exists inside of every single day. Right? There's a habit that I work on with people, and it's the habit of demonstrating courage. It's being courageous. And Alejandro, if I had to ask you this question, right, like, how would you define courage? Like, if you had to define courage to someone, how would you define courage?
Facing the things you're uncomfortable with, facing the hard things in your life. That's really how I describe it. It's like if there's something that you don't want to do, knowing that it will benefit you health wise or benefit you and your family somehow, but you don't want to do it because it's hard and you face it, you have courage.
I love that. So, and exactly what you said, it's doing the things you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Acknowledging, like, this is something I don't want to do. It scares me. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be painful. And essentially doing it anyway.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, me and you have very similar definitions of courage. And when we have the habit of being courageous, everybody on the planet, everyone listening right now knows how to be courageous. In fact, I would say everybody listening right now has shown courage and has demonstrated courage at some point in their life. It happens, right?
Even even
It's a courageous moment.
even
Sorry?
to even to take their time and place a comment in our podcast, that takes courage.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Like leaving a comment, reaching out to somebody you want to talk to. It's a courageous moment when a person is at their job and they've been bullied at work and they finally stand up for themselves. It's a courageous moment when the single mom working 80 hours a week says, I need a raise. The problem, the challenge I see though, is that people typically wait until the last moment, until the straw's about to break the camel's back before they have an act of courage, before they have a courageous moment. And so, what I'm looking at for people is generating the habit. It's also kind of weird when I'm not talking to Alejandro anymore. I feel like I'm just talking to myself. But Alejandro will be back in a minute. If y'all are listening, demonstrating the habit of being courageous, which means looking for the opportunity each day to have the uncomfortable conversation, the conversation that grows you, to send that text message, to send that email, to ask the guy or the girl out, to go and ask for the raise, to ask for more responsibility, to ask for the things that you want. That's courage. To be able to speak up for yourself, that is courage. But again, we haven't developed that as a habit. There's a habit involved in being able to ask for what you want and do the thing even if you're scared. So Alejandro, I don't know if you heard that while you stepped out, but
I did not hear that last part, brother.
it's all good, brother. But
Oh,
that's what we look at when it comes to cultivating a mindset. I love it. Victor says, I'm listening. Appreciate you, Victor. Um, so from that standpoint, you know, what's been really interesting, actually, even while we've been on this trip, inside the RV, obviously, with running across America, we got five guys live. What's up, Tawana? We've got five guys, six guys living inside of an RV together. Even in this trip, in this environment, we've had to have some tough, uncomfortable conversations with one another. like conversations that we don't always necessarily want to have. In fact, we had one of those conversations last night, and it required courage. But this is for the sake of each of us growing, coming back to the best version of ourselves. It's a daily routine to look for the obstacles in our lives, look for the obstacles in your day. So, everybody that's listening right now, audit your day, audit your week, look for the repeating patterns of what problems have kept coming up over and over and over.
Mm-hmm.
There's opportunities to overcome an obstacle that will get you to the next level.
Marlon, what do you do when you have a scenario where you've been challenging yourself to do something? When you finally get there, you do it over and over, and then it just becomes a regular thing. It's no longer a challenge. What do you typically do? That do you challenge with something twice as hard, or what do you seek for? Because I have a dilemma right now where I've been doing Live Hard for 4 years, where it's literally it's your lifestyle now. It's a lifestyle now. It's no more longer like a challenge, and the biggest thing I do is just I do it all year. It's supposed to be 6 months, but I do it all year. What now? What do you look for now? And obviously, my challenge is the 100 miles, but in a scenario like that, what would you do?
Yeah, so great question, Alejandro. Are you familiar with who David Goggins is?
1000%, yeah.
Awesome. And have you heard of a gentleman by the name of Andrew Huberman?
Yep. Yep.
Awesome. So
Yep.
recently, and I think it was a few months ago, Andrew Huberman had David Goggins on his podcast, and he was so excited about having Goggins on because you always hear Goggins talk about him going out to do these difficult things, right? Like go run 200 miles in the middle of the night, go run in a 100-degree desert, wearing a sweatsuit. Like he just does these intense things for the sake of killing off his inner bitch voice and growing stronger. And so he always says when he's doing this, like he's adding another one to the cookie jar. You hear him talk about like, man, today was a hard day. I was in the hurt locker and like I finished the workout, so I'm adding this to the cookie jar. And so Huberman actually found that there is a muscle in the brain that they never noticed before. There's a muscle in the brain that actively grows stronger the more regularly you do things that you do not want to do. So look at this for a minute. When you do things that you do not want to do, for example, when people get into a cold plunge, right? Like you get into a tub of ice and you don't want to get in, and your voice is saying, like, no, Alejandro, just go back to your bed. It's warm, it's comfortable, it's safe. Don't get into the ice plunge. You don't need to do this. And you get in anyway. That muscle gets strengthened. And your capacity to make yourself do things, your capacity to discipline yourself actually grows. Now, here's what's interesting: that muscle only grows if the task you're doing is something you do not want to do. So now let's say you're someone like me, where I ice plunge and I'm getting to the point where I actually like the ice plunge. That muscle is no longer growing when I get into the ice plunge because I actually enjoy getting into the ice plunge. A few months ago, I started to realize I enjoy running in the morning. When I first used to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go for a run, I hated it. And then it started to get normal. And then I actually started to look forward to it. It was my time alone in the morning. I could run, I had peace. And so 5 a.m. runs were fun. And I started reintroducing lifting, weightlifting into my routine. And I started to hate lifting. And I used to love lifting, but I felt weak under the weights. And so what I started doing was, first I started to notice I was missing gym sessions. Like I wasn't hitting and finishing my full gym workouts, but I was always hitting my runs. I started to switch things up. I started to do my weightlifting at 5 o'clock in the morning. And I hated that. But I was exercising that muscle. So when you start to find that things become so routine from a personal development standpoint, like if I'm talking business and something's working, I'm not switching it. But from a personal development standpoint, of building my character standpoint, of strengthening that muscle of my mind and callousing my mind and cultivating a growth mindset, when I start to find that I am enjoying something too much, I will actively shake the boat. I will rock the boat and I will introduce something new and uncomfortable into it. And there are two brothers actually I got to know really well in Arizona, Dylan and Brandon Trana. Freaking love those two guys. Dylan and Brandon used to jump on back when I was running MMC calls at 4 a.m. in the morning. I would run these daily mindset Zoom calls for the people in my community at 4 a.m. Arizona time in the morning. And I started when I used to live on the East Coast, so it was 7 a.m. for me out on the East Coast, which is a normal time to be awake. 4 a.m. is also normal to be awake, but like a very early time to be on Zoom and on computers. Dylan and Brandon would get up and get on those calls with me in the morning. And at first, they hated it. It was miserable for them to wake up that early. But then they started to get used to it. They started to get adjusted to it. And after a few months, they said to me, "Hey, Marlon, we love the calls, but we're going to switch it up now. And we're now starting to do boxing at 4 o'clock in the morning because we found that we're getting too accustomed to this and we want to stay on our toes." And as a result, those two brothers, young guys, like I don't even think they're 21 years old yet, crushing it this year. Like they told me, they're like, "Yeah, we're not making as much as you yet," but like I'm like, "Well, how much are you guys making?" They're like, like we only did like about $200,000 or $300,000 this year." I'm like, "Guys, you're 21 years old and you're already making multiple six figures. You're good. Like not like you're good to stop, but like you're doing well." But
Yeah.
I just love seeing their willingness to make themselves uncomfortable because your ability to tolerate risk and your ability to stand in the fire for longer periods of time and make yourself be uncomfortable will be directly correlated to your capacity to grow, in my opinion, because it's ultimately, if you want something bad enough, you have to be willing to overpay to get it. You have to be willing to pay the price of change, pay the price of discomfort, pay the price of putting in the time and effort for things to build up to the point where the change is visible and the change does occur. So that's my short answer.
Add more to the cookie jar.
Add more to the cookie jar, bro. Just like you're
Yeah.
doing with the runs. Like the runs will be. I doubt you feel like running. I doubt you like want to wake up and go out and run. But because you don't want to do it and your ability to get yourself to do it, that will be the thing that starts to cultivate a a deeper callousing of your mind. Quite frankly,
Yeah. It's just it's the idea of reaching to your higher potential, the future you, the higher level you, because we all live in a world where your daily actions will determine what future you will be visiting in the future, if that makes sense. Is it going to be the broke lazy person that's out of shape, or is it going to be the person, because if you look at it like multiple universe, like the Marvel movies, they'll have multiple universe. Spider-Man is this person in this world, he's this guy, he's this, and it all depends on what you do on those daily actions. So whatever you do today, it's going to determine what you're going to become in the future. So you have to be really careful of how you approach your days and what you're looking to do. So I'm always, it's just the idea of, what is Alejandro that runs 100 miles in 2 weeks look like? What does he think like? And the fact that I have control of meeting that person in the future is what gets me excited. Forget the hard shit. I understand it's hard. I mean, 90% of the things I do every day, it's hard, and I don't want to do it. I'd much rather just be on the beach drinking coffee with someone speaking a language that I don't understand. That'd be cool. But unfortunately, I'm not in that position yet. So I just have to keep doing the harder things to get me to a higher level mentally, where I can project that into my financials, the business. What can I do in my business now to move me to the next level? Well, now I'm talking to the Alejandro that runs 100 miles every 2 weeks. That person has a little bit more wisdom and thinks a little bit more different. He can help you get to the next level in your business. So it's just that idea that keeps me going, man. I'm actually, like, I'm pumped. I'm ready for this podcast to be over so I can just put my shoes on and go run.
Yeah, man. You know what's funny? It's here's an interesting paradox as well. I believe in hard work, right? Like I believe in hard work and smart work, right? You hear people say
Yeah.
work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
And for business, I think that's the absolute truth. And for personal development, for character development, I think work harder, work hard, right? Like Myron Golden, a mentor of mine, Myron Golden says, hard work won't make you rich, but hard work's not meant to make you rich. Hard work is meant to build your character. And we're always remembering that. So I know when I'm going out and I'm running, right? Like the amount of running I'm doing doesn't correlate to how much money I'm making in business, but the amount of running I'm doing correlates to who Marlon Johnson is as a man, who Marlon Johnson is as a person. The ability to get myself to do what I say I was going to do, to make my word impeccable, to follow through on the things I said I was going to do. That's what this does for us. So now, when I say in business, we're going to do this, we're going to run this campaign, we're going to hit this goal, we're going to make this happen. Not only do other people believe me when I say it, I believe me when I say it because everything else I've said up until this point, even the most difficult of difficult things, I followed through on. That I want people to remember that is why we work hard. It's so that we can have, you know, I'm someone that reads my Bible. I read Scripture, and in Scripture it talks about the power of the tongue, Alejandro. Right? It talks about the tongue being mightier than the sword, right? The pen, and you hear like these sayings like the pen is mightier than the sword, tongue is mightier than the sword, and sometimes that seems confusing to people. However, when you think about what your tongue has the power to do, right? You speak these words and you speak things into existence. Not everybody seems to have that power to speak things into existence because they talk about things and it doesn't happen, and yet other people talk about things and it comes to fruition. What's the difference between those two people? Well, some people, their word has integrity, it has power. I'm every single day, I'm working on building the power of my word. That Alejandro, if I say something to you that I'm going to do it, it's as good as us having a signed contract, right? Like I already know that you've got the 100 miles done. I know that. Real talk. I know your character. I know it's done.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about it. Like people ask me like, hey, why do you you know, choose to run across America with Andrew? Because Andrew's one of those friends. He's one of those people that if he tells me he's going to do something, I don't need to second guess him. It's as
Yeah.
good as done.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? That's a person I can get around. That's a person I can get behind. If y'all listening feel like you don't have those sort of people in your life, be that person. Be that type of person. If you're not finding those types of people in your life and you're like, Marlon, every single person in my life isn't like that, that's a reflection of you. That means there's something missing in your word. So start making your word law. That you say it, it is as good as done. And watch how you start to shift with the environments and the people that start to come around you. I promise you that will happen. It's a vibration, it's a science, it's unavoidable. Right? Like it's just like with Sam when we talk about marketing, you make certain inputs, the outputs take care of themselves. If you start keeping your word, you start keeping the promises you make to yourself and that you make to others, I guarantee you within 6 months, your life will look drastically different. Within 1 year, it will look unrecognizable. I can guarantee that.
Mm. Did we lose him? Oh, he's back. Oh, you from?
Yep.
Well
So
said, my friend.
appreciate that, brother. Um, but I think we are at the top of the hour. Um, guys, I want to know how many of you, if this was valuable for you, do me a favor. One, like always, like, share, and comment. It is huge for us. I mean, I appreciate it immensely. Like we've had Peter in the chat, we had Victor in the chat, we had Tawana in the chat, Abraham. Like I appreciate it when y'all are dropping comments. That helps out with the algorithm immensely. We're going to keep showing up consistently. We're going to keep having these conversations consistently. This is a time where Alejandro, myself, and Sam, we get to connect with one another. We're able to take time out of our schedules to be here on these calls, and we get to answer you guys' questions. So this is the form that we do to make ourselves available to y'all. So make sure you like and comment and subscribe so that you have all that stuff. Secondly, what I want to do is I really want to start to get some feedback from the audience. So do me this favor, either myself, Sam, or Alejandro, DM us with what are your challenges in business? What are your challenges in life? Let us know so that we can start to cultivate and create episodes or bring on guests that will better serve y'all. Next week, I know Sam wants to dive in and do some hot seats around some of the questions he's been getting in his DMs. So that's going to be phenomenal. So be sure you're back here next Tuesday at 5 p.m. Arizona time. I don't even know what time zone we're in. 5 p.m. PST next week. But Alejandro, you got anything to say to these folks before we log out tonight?
Other than just thank you for showing up and leaving us some comments. Would love some feedbacks, and of course, if this brought you value, like Marlon says, share with your friends. We don't ask for any credit cards information. Just kindly share if you got any value from it, and if not, if you still feel like you need to watch a little bit more, just make sure before you share it. Feel free to do so. That's fair game. And yeah, man, Marlon, appreciate you for today, brother.
Dude, brother, appreciate you, brother. Guys, we'll see you next week.